the Solar Warden. The interplanetary corporate conglomerate ICC needed a space fleet that would patrol the solar system and ensure that their territories within the solar system would be protected. This was where the idea of a Solar Warden fleet emerged. Plans for such a fleet emerged in the 1960s when the U.S. Air Force Special Programs made an effort to defend the local territory around Earth using U.S.-manufactured anti-gravity aerospace craft, such as the two-man Lockheed X-22, a disc that flew out of Vandenberg and Beale Air Force bases in California. These spacecraft intercepted UFOs deemed unfriendly and fired weapons to disable or destroy them. It is important to understand that these programs never sought to prevent all ETs from abducting the human population. Rather, their goals were to ensure that only authorized races could get access to human resources for which the cabal probably got a share of the profits. In the 1960s, Bill Tompkins reported that Nordic ETs would meet with Navy officials in international waters for private conversations. ET races from the Pleiades, Andromeda, and Alpha Centauri b were also reported to have been sent to Earth to assist in technological exchange programs. The 1957 meeting of Eisenhower and Pentagon officials with Val Thor seems to have kicked off this process. Very likely, a large part of the goal of these technology exchange programs would have been the development of the Solar Warden fleet. In submarines, the crew is isolated in a confined space for long periods of time, and this was deemed as a necessary part of deep space travel. As the U.S. Navy was already experienced in dealing with submarines, and the first U.S. spaceships were basically cylindrical submarines fitted with torsion field generators and anti-gravity technology, it was decided that they would develop their own space program, which would become the Solar Warden. By 1982, the Solar Warden was officially launched under the control of the U.S. Navy. Both the French and U.S. governments worked together on this project. The Solar Warden Space Fleet operates under the U.S. Naval Network and Space Operations Command. There are approximately 300 personnel involved at that facility. Solar Warden is said to be made up of U.S. aerospace contractors, but with some contributions of parts and systems by the UK, Canada, Italy, Austria, Russia, and Australia. Their ships are less advanced than those used by the ICC and Dark Fleet, deeper into space. The first Solar Warden vessels were built in the 1970s in the massive underground facilities beneath Wasatch Mountains, Utah. However, the bulk of the Solar Warden space fleet was produced in the 1980s and 1990s, with continuous upgrades being applied to its cylindrical ships. These ships were built to be modular, so that units like medical bays, storage rooms, research labs, and offices can be installed as per mission requirements from within their docking stations. It is said that the Solar Warden had approximately 8 cigar-shaped motherships, each longer than 2 football fields end-to-end, and 43 small scout ships. Another source claims that the largest craft is 2 kilometers long, and their fleet includes carriers, fighters, triangular shuttles, troop transport ships, research vessels, supply ships, and hospital ships. At a later stage, the U.S. Air Force was able to use tall white technology to create the black triangular spaceship that had white lights on its corners, the TR-3 Billions. Development seemed to have started with the TR-3, a black manta, which was a black project within the Northrop Corporation. Former Area 51 employee Edgar Fouché talks about seeing the TR-3 Billions in Area 51 S4 facility until it became operational in the late 1980s. The TR-3 Billions was developed in the 1980s under the cover of the same project that developed the B-2 bomber, which, not coincidentally, was also made black and triangular. The TR-3 Billions is said to be able to jump forward in time and uses a high-speed, counter-rotating mercury-like substance to reduce the influence of gravity and inertia by up to 90%. This craft was later upgraded into the larger TR-10, which can accommodate more people and facilities. These crafts were the first vehicles that could go out to the Oort cloud that surrounds our solar system beyond the Kuiper Belt. The years 1990 to 2004 saw an intense wave of flying triangular aircraft, and this is probably when TR-3BS started to become more commonly used by the ICC. In 2005, one source stated that the Solar Warden had 8 carriers and more than 40 fighter craft, which resembled the TR-3 Billions models. When Gary McKinnon hacked into 97 United States military and NASA computers over a 13-month period between February 2001 and March 2002, he learned of the existence of non-terrestrial officers and fleet-to-fleet transfers. McKinnon also found out about 2 ships or craft within Solar Warden that were called the USS LeMay and the USS Hillenkoetter. Typically, Navy ship names start with USS, an acronym for United States Ship. However, there are 3 S here, which presumably could stand for United States Spaceship. These ship names do not exist in any fleet of the terrestrial U.S. Navy's ocean-going inventory. Initially, the Solar Warden served the members of Earth's cabal, and their missions were mostly around rescuing abducted kids of corporate leaders, traveling back in time to protect some of them from assassinations, or rescuing valuable personnel that had been captured by other ET races. Time travel was also used to prevent scenarios that were unfavorable to the cabal. Soon, it developed into rescue operations, in which personnel was retrieved from the native reptilian species that the ICC had encountered on Mars. The Solar Warden maintained a strict perimeter around the Earth, and about 120 different races were permitted to approach the Earth's surface and interfere with civilians. Other than their militaristic role, the Solar Warden was involved in the search and reverse engineering of ancient ET technology that was floating in space or buried in moons or asteroids. Solar Warden freighters were also being used to transport goods from Earth to the colonies in space that were still not self-sufficient. They had their headquarters in the Victoria crater on Mars. Although many of the rank and file members were military abductees or MyLabs who were made to sign legal documents before their admission into the program, the upper brass were U.S. Navy military officials who were loyal to the United States. Many of those MyLabs were starseeds that participated in hybridization programs for the Saturn Council races and were chosen for their genetics even before they became adults. Tall grays were used in the abduction and implantation of the MeLabs for the Solar Warden. Many MeLabs were trained for these programs since childhood. The government would usually move chosen children into classes for gifted children that were free from the oversight of normal teachers. From there, the kids would be regularly taken for field trips to military facilities where procedures would be done on them to enhance their abilities and evaluate them for future roles in the secret space programs. Using drugs and mind control technology, the children would be made to forget what happened to them on those trips. The Solar Warden, though creating the outward appearance of protecting humanity from outside forces that wanted to abduct us, was involved in dark activities that proved otherwise. Corey Goode has experienced both these sides of Solar Warden. The reason for this compartmentalization was so that many lower-ranking members of the Cabal and the Lunar Operations Command could be deceived into thinking that the Cabal's secret space program aimed to protect humanity from the Draconians, the Orion Group, and the other ET races out there that wished to exploit us, and that all the secrecy was to not panic humanity until the ETs that they believed were good Galactic Federation would show up on the scene. Being linked to the ICC, under the table, Solar Warden was willing to trade anything, including humans in cages, to around 900 races to acquire technology, which was often reverse engineered in labs by their scientists. Breeding pairs of humans were more valuable. The human workers who were a part of this slavery wing would go through memory wipes and alter-based mind control to ensure that they would not remember what they were a part of once they left the program. Some ET races found eating human meat a delicacy, and thus the Solar Warden ships often carried frozen human meat to trading posts. This meat often came from cyborg manufacturing facilities on Mars, where the homeless and refugees from Earth would be converted into cyborgs. Many of the ET races captured by the Solar Warden were also routinely tortured by the crew through the intruder interrogation and interception program. Corey Goode was a part of this wing. The Solar Warden was also involved in jettisoning many of the crew members out into space, rather than returning them to their homes on Earth after their 22-year period was over. When the crews learned that the ICC was doing this to save expenses, it caused some amount of internal rebellion, which was quickly suppressed. This is the result of being run by a conglomerate of profit-seeking corporations that have no or very little ethical oversight. At later stages, clones were often used with the Solar Warden, however. They were not as efficient as humans abducted from Earth because they lacked much of the interpersonal experiences that could be experienced on Earth. These clones were operated by programmed soul fragments of the original person the clone was developed from. David Rousseau speaks about his experience on a Solar Warden ship named the Solaris, where he was tutored by Maria Orsic of the Virile Society. He eventually befriended Jean-Charles Moyen, who was a crew member of the Excelsior mothership that the Galactic Federation has parked around our orbit. He recalls being trained as a child with other humanoid extraterrestrial children having other skin colors by Maria. Some were human-like and others were like gray ETs. Very likely these children were selected specimens from other worlds managed by the Saturn Council, in which similar genetic experiments were being run. Very likely the Atlantean Draconian Alliance is running similar genetic breeding programs in other planets as well to create warrior slave races who will fight their wars for them. In his missions fighting the Martian native reptilians who had kidnapped some of the Pleiadians from Maya, his team was rescued by the Arcturians when defeat was imminent. These experiences suggest that the Galactic Federation actively monitors and supports Solar Warden activity. David has observed Blue Avians, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Lyrans get involved with the Solar Warden. Corey Goode, who was an intuitive empath for the Solar Warden, recounts his story of accompanying other human representatives in the Saturn Council meetings, where he was tasked with sensing deception amongst the other ET diplomats who were present. Apparently, the ICC had to negotiate a lot with the ETs before being even given a chance to attend these meetings regarding handling Project Mankind. In the Saturn Council, Corey witnessed 60 different ET races, most of them resembling humans, deciding the fate of the population on Earth. They were the ones keeping humanity in this 3D state of suffering for so long to advance their own evolution via hybridization programs. He learned that the Saturn Council ETs eventually planned to free the Cabal's secret space program so that they may join them in exploiting and abducting other ET races they control, similar to what the ETs did to us. However, not all of them agreed to this plan, and due to the tensions that followed, according to Corey Goode's sources, the Council officially disbanded in 2019. The Solar Warden is just one fleet used by the Cabal to control traffic coming into the solar system for the Saturn Council. Randy Kramer has stated that Radiant Guardian is another fleet that is linked with unmandated operations dealing with protecting the space around other off-world colonies. It operates similarly to Solar Warden, but with a distinct chain of command to ensure the compartmentalization of knowledge of what is occurring within the GGLN colonies. 7.8 Global Galactic League of Nations. Just like how the German breakaway had expanded its colonies deep into space, the ICC has done the same, utilizing people extracted from Earth. In the 1960s, many of the major world governments met up within a closed United Nations session that was led by the U.S. The list included NATO countries, a few South American countries, and North African countries. They were told that the long-term survival of life on this planet was at stake, and thus the most ethical thing to do would be to agree to have members of their population recruited to a space program that would come to be known as the Global Galactic League of Nations, or GGLN for short. According to Corey Goode, the landings on the moon with conventional spacecraft were so that the Cabal could retrieve samples of soil. This soil was studied and noted to have a glassy texture, which indicated the possibility that periodic micro to nova events were occurring from the sun. This was used by the Cabal to back up the claim that another major solar event would occur that would wipe out all the electronics mankind had developed. Secret space programs traveling around the local solar systems also interacted with different ET races and discovered that every 12,000 years there is a major solar flash event occurring in our star system, with the next one due shortly. This information was provided to the nations invited, and all of them agreed to contribute up to 1% of their population having the best genetics and a portion of their national GDP for colonization programs outside the solar system aimed at the preservation of the human race. These countries collectively provided trillions of dollars every year that went into these programs, and many of their manufactured goods were transported to these colonies to help them get started. The GGLN colonies were used as a carrot that was offered to all the other nations on Earth to have them maintain this veil of secrecy on the existence of ETs, UFOs, and secret space programs. The GGLN colonies were set up on the border of our galaxy and the Andromeda Galaxy. In 2022, Corey Goode's Earth Alliance sources mentioned that the GGLN colonies were being visited by teams of Nordic ETs from the Galactic Federation. This group was assisting the ICC with technology and helped them establish trade with other ET civilizations. As the Galactic Federation had been spreading the notion that they were the liberators of humanity, the colonies welcomed them happily and even provided them with living spaces. The Nordic ET teams consisted of more females than males. More women were needed as their aim was to infiltrate the leadership of these colonies by forming sexual relationships with key personnel, who were mostly males. Soon, instead of encouraging the GGLN colonies to continue developing advanced technologies, the Federation urged them to accept already perfected technology from them. The Galactic Federation was surprised at the rapid rate at which humans were developing technology and felt that at this rate there was a chance that the human population of those colonies could break free from their grip of control. Thus, they encouraged everyone to take implants that would tie the human subconscious to an AI that they controlled. These implants would enable them to intuitively understand key concepts needed to advance technologically at extraordinary rates, and thus many of these colonies accepted the implants. The members of the colonies had heard about the AI god that had already infiltrated the Draconian and Orion empires, and thus was afraid of such implants. But the Nordics assured them that the network the implants used was separate from that of the AI god. However, the Nordics were eventually caught communicating with the tall grays from the Orion Empire regarding keeping humanity in control. and this led to the members of the colonies losing faith in the Galactic Federation. Soon a rebellion formed within the GGLN colonies, but those colonies that had already taken the implants were mind-controlled subconsciously to the point that they couldn't disobey the Federation. The GGLN rebels then tried to contact the ICC as they believed that they were being infiltrated by the Galactic Federation through the implants. However, instead of listening to their warnings, the ICC leaders told them to force the implants upon their citizens immediately. Thankfully, some of the rebel colonies have not yet done so. They declared independence from the other ICC and GGLN colonies. It appears that the ICC is heavily influenced by the Orion Group and the Galactic Federation ETs. It was the Cortium ETs that got the major figures in the NSA's Labyrinth group addicted to implants, which ultimately ended up controlling them. Soon, most people within the space fleets under them got implanted as well. For example, Corey Good reports being implanted by a tall gray ET before he served his term in the Solar Warden. In the same room, he witnessed half-naked men and women line up and be implanted by grays behind their necks. Unlike what the UFO community believes, the overwhelming majority of gray-like races are not under the control of the Draconians. Many of them from Orion and Arcturus are actually working with the Galactic Federation Nordics. Most of the gray human hybrids are made by them and not the grays under the Draconians, as the UFO community has been led to believe. The Nordics plan to eventually transfer the human race to 1FO, their human slave warrior race colonies in Aldebaran, so that the Earth becomes freed up for these hybrids. Very likely these Nordics have also contributed their genetics to the creation of gray human hybrids as a part of an agreement with the gray-like races from Arcturus and Orion. To fulfill this agenda, getting the leadership of the Cabal and all their colonies implanted was the first step before dealing with the people on Earth directly. Apart from GGLN, there are also the United Corporations of Altair and other minor programs in space that are also under the control of the ICC. The United Corporations of Altair have enslaved alien worlds in the Altair system with the help of the private militaries and have built several outposts there. The ICC was provided with frequency coordinates of planets in the Altair system, possibly by ETs from Sirius B, that also provided them with the Montauk chair technology. These coordinates were used to create portals to those planets and launch an invasion from Earth. Michael Sala's book, Rise of the Red Dragon, Origins and Threat of China's Secret Space Program, gives the reader an idea of how Dr. Xian Shu Shen brought his advanced knowledge of secret space programs in Nazi Germany and the US to China. This has also allowed China to develop its own secret space program that was not as successful as that of either the ICC or the Dark Fleet. As of 2022, the Galactic Federation is working on unifying all the secret space programs, both private and national, under the Artemis Accords drafted in October 2020. The U.S. has been chosen to lead the other space programs in this combined effort under the United States Space Force. As of 2023, Corey Good has been told by his Earth Alliance contacts that the rebel GGLN colonies and the Eosian Race Zulu plan to fight their way into the solar system against all the Saturn Council ETs that still want to maintain control over our world. He says that they will arrive just before the solar flash event occurs, and that the Orion Group, Galactic Federation, and the Andromedan Syndicate will brainwash the human masses into thinking they are the enemies. I want to inform the reader that Corey Good was the original source that coined terms such as Secret Space Program, Solar Warden, Dark Fleet, GGLN colonies, and Saturn Council after recovering his memories of a 20-year and back during which he worked under the ICC. Ever since he recovered his memories, He has been approached by figures from the Earth Alliance who have provided him with updates. Personally, I don't trust Corey Goode's Earth Alliance contacts, as they are very likely cabal agents pretending to be from the Earth Alliance. The first time Corey met Gonzalez of the Earth Alliance, he was with the Mayan Eats from the Saturn Council, and they were searching Corey Goode's room for evidence. I don't think a secret space program alliance or Earth Alliance can exist when the ICC and Dark Fleet are both working together with the ET groups associated with the Saturn Council. Any real alliance that would attempt to break free from the ICC would be immediately dealt with given the strength of the opposition in this solar system. The fact that the Earth Alliance representatives have befriended Corey Goode in his personal life and have broken their side of the agreements they made with him adds credibility to my theory they are agents working for counterintelligence under the ICC. Aside from their narratives to define the theme of a good guy and a bad guy, just like the other ET propaganda out there, they do not provide Corey Goode with any practical information on ET biological and technological capabilities, cabal membership, ET protocols, including how they play mind games with the human population, and a list of the different ET races involved. They do not educate Corey Goode way further than what he already knows, owing to his personal experiences in Solar Warden and what he gathered from others in the UFO community. They do not even tell Corey Goode good speaking points to dismiss the pro-Federation storyline that Elena Danaan is spreading. This is a clear indication that they are not really trying to empower him or his followers. Rather, it seems that they view Corey Goode as a dangerous leak that was pushed forward by the Blue Avians, and that they needed to redirect his narrative toward another alternative storyline or trap that would serve the same ultimate agendas of Project Mankind. This is why I would caution the reader against trusting any group that tries to help us in the future under the banner of the GGLN colonies or Guardians Eosians. 7.9 The 20 Years in Back Program. As the Nazis had done extensive mind control research on the Jews in concentration camps, many of them were brought to the U.S. to continue their experiments. For example, Dr. Josef Mengele was called the Angel of Death in the Nazi concentration camps. The U.S. government downplayed his involvement at the Nuremberg trials, and to confuse investigators about his whereabouts, U.S. officials would report he was in Paraguay or Brazil, or simply stated that he was dead. In secrecy, the U.S. government brought him to the United States China Lake Naval Base in the desert of California to continue mind control experiments. Research into controlling the human mind was conducted in the U.S. through the MK-Ultra program. It began in 1953, was reduced in scope in 1964 and 1967, and was halted in 1973 after the U.S. and Russia reverse-engineered a memory wipe device from the German breakaway civilization. The main aim of MK-Ultra was to figure out a way to mind control people so that a covert space program could become a reality. All those who were returned after service in those programs needed to be memory wiped so that they would not awaken the masses of the ET threats. This seems to have been a condition that the Saturn Council enforced, as they did not want our governments to interfere in their genetic experiment. The U.S. government had originally believed that the ETs were able to memory wipe and control all of their human abductees using drugs. This is why the initial experiments of MK-Ultra were intended to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used to memory wipe people and make their minds highly suggestible. It was only when they gained more understanding of psychic phenomena and the workings of the human mind did they realize that ETs didn't need to use drugs to achieve the above effects. Directors of the MK-Ultra program had also learned from the Greys that it was possible to fragment the human mind into several alters that did not share common memories. The program developed this into a secondary aim of creating sleeper agents or alters that could carry out missions for them, while the primary ego had no comprehension of the alter's activities. To fragment the mind, the program used numerous methods to manipulate its subjects' mental states and brain functions, such as the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs and other chemicals, electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, in addition to other forms of torture. Some have reported being drowned and revived so that their souls could leave their bodies during the near-death experience and remote view locations for those running the programs. Eventually, the NSA figured out a way to have the alters and their corresponding soul fragments take charge of different cloned human bodies. This way, someone with the aptitude and genetic compatibility for a particular role could be cloned to work several parallel jobs within the space programs. As each clone is running a separate alter of the same soul that has its own memory compartment, mission secrecy could be more easily maintained. The above method was refined into a protocol that we call the 20 years and back in the 1980s. It was used by the ICC to fill the quotas of the Germans and their own space programs. The Saturn Council chose the 20-year length of time for a single period of service as they felt that longer periods would result in decreased mental stability due to memory leak issues between alters. Teams within the ICC's secret space programs would go back in time and kidnap people from their beds through portals that connected them to UFOs. This operation targeted people as far back as the 1960s. In some cases, human personnel wearing gray or reptilian outfits, or ETs cloned by the governments, may be deployed to maintain the illusion that the Orion Empire and the Draconians are solely responsible for all abductions on Earth, in case the ICC has decided to lease that person over to the dark fleet. Usually, gray and reptilian ETs are present in the UFOs, and they take the abductee to the dark fleet base on the moon, where they implant him while he is in a mind-controlled zombie-like state. These abductees are not just taken from Earth, but they also come from the colonies on the moon, Mars, and Ceres. Sometimes to sort the abductees into different roles, the tall grays administer examinations on computers. In some cases, when the ICC desires to experiment on a person or use them for their own secret space programs, they may be transported to facilities beneath Air Force bases. Sometimes, instead of direct abductions, the military intervenes with the school through a military contractor posing as a teacher and moves these kids to special classes for gifted children. Then, they may be taken away for a day at a military base as a part of a field trip. From there, they are drugged, implanted, and sent for training to work in a 22-year program in space. Usually, their souls are moved to cloned adult bodies for this to take place. After their souls have been used, they are memory wiped and returned back to their original bodies. With the help of drugs which make the mind suggestible, the children go back home thinking that they spent the entire day learning about science and history at the military base. When one is abducted in such a manner by the government, they are referred to as military abductees or MILABs. Corey Good reports being taken to MILAB training in Carswell Air Force Base by his teacher from the time he was in elementary school till he was 17. At the age of 17, he was forcibly recruited into the Solar Warden program for a 20-year and back. He was only able to recall these hidden memories during an eye surgery. Others have reported voluntarily joining these programs while serving in the military. They are often made to sign documents that state that they will serve a period of 20 years for the secret space program along with a non-disclosure agreement. To keep them motivated throughout this long period, they would be promised that when they were age regressed and returned to Earth, the military would ensure that they would be given an easy life, the best education, scholarships, and top-end jobs. Sadly, these promises would seldom be kept, as living in high society would bring more credibility to the rare cases in which a participant starts to remember what was done to him. Usually, only those in management positions of. The ICC would be given rewards back on Earth for their 20 years of service. It is also possible to extend this contract by another 20 years, but this requires another contract to be signed. In most cases,